I never imagined the sound of my own son's voice could feel like a door slamming shut. But that morning, as I stood on Brian's front porch with my small suitcase and aching knees, his words cut sharper than any winter wind. "Mum, you can't live with us. Tara and I talked about it." For a second, it felt like the air left my lungs. The world behind him, their tidy hallway, the warm smell of coffee, the faint sound of my granddaughter Grace laughing somewhere inside. All of it blurred, like someone smeared my whole life with a trembling hand. I tried to smile. "I won't be any trouble, sweetheart. It's only for a little while, until—" He wouldn't meet my eyes. Brian used to hold my face with both hands when he was little, telling me, "Mom, I'll always take care of you." But the man standing in front of me was distant, guilty, almost afraid. "It's Tara," he whispered. She thinks it's not a good idea." And just like that, my place in my own family felt uncertain. Inside the house, I could smell cinnamon from the candles Tara always bought in bulk. Their home was spotless, too spotless. Like peace that had been polished until it looked real, my heart thudded as if it already knew something was wrong. I stepped back from the doorway, tightening my coat around my thin shoulders. "I see," I said softly, but I didn't. Not yet. The sun was barely rising, brushing the sky over Willow Creek with streaks of pink and grey, the kind of morning that tastes like cold air and loneliness. My fingers were stiff from the chill, but my mind was burning. Burning with questions. Burning with hurt. Why would Tara suddenly object to me staying? I had only asked for a month, just 1 month, while the repairs on my old house were being finished. And Tara, she had always been polite. Not warm, but polite. A tight smile here, a forced hug on holidays, a "How are you, Ruth?" that carried no real curiosity. But this was more than discomfort. Something else was brewing. I turned to leave, my suitcase dragging across the porch as loudly as my heartbeat. Down the steps, across the brittle grass, towards the street where Irene Dawson, my neighbor, had dropped me off earlier. I wasn't crying. Not yet. Tears feel heavy before they fall. Behind me, the door shut, quietly, but final. I walked slowly through the neighborhood, noticing things I'd never paid attention to before. The way the leaves gathered in corners like forgotten promises, the distant barking of a dog, the chill biting through my gloves. I had spent my whole life giving this family everything I had, and now I wasn't welcome. Halfway down the street, I paused. My breath made a small cloud in the morning air. That's when something strange caught my eye. The living room curtains at Brian's house, the ones always open, were pulled tightly shut, but a shadow moved behind them, quickly, nervously. And for just a second, I saw Tara peek through the side of the curtain, watching me leave, not with relief, with fear. I tightened my grip on the suitcase handle. Something wasn't right. And if Tara was hiding something, it wasn't small. I made it home an hour later, my house still half covered in dust sheets from the renovation workers. The air smelled of paint and sawdust. But as I stepped into the living room, something unusual stopped me cold. One of the rugs, the one by the old fireplace, was slightly lifted at the corner, as if someone had stepped on it recently, or hidden something underneath. I bent down, heart beating fast, and then I saw it. A letter, folded, unmarked, no sender's name, just tucked there, as if someone wanted me to find it, or wanted to warn me. And that was the moment my hands began to tremble, because I knew this wasn't an accident. Ruth Callahan sat in the dim light of her small living room, trying for the third time to call her son, Brian Hale. The phone rang endlessly, unanswered. Her thumb hovered over the screen as a strange uneasiness settled in her chest. The house felt wrong today, too quiet, too still, as if the walls were holding their breath. She glanced again at the envelope Grace Lane had sent her last night. Grace was not someone who panicked easily, yet the letter she wrote was filled with fear. If someone comes to your house early in the morning, do not trust their first words. And whatever you do, Ruth, do not open the attic door. Ruth read it again and again. She didn't understand why Grace would write such a warning. Who would come early morning? And the attic. Ruth hadn't even opened that door in years. It barely budged. A sudden creak echoed from the back hallway. Ruth stiffened. "Tara," she called out. But Tara Callahan wasn't expected until afternoon. The sound didn't feel like footsteps of someone she knew. It felt like the house shifting under pressure. Ruth walked slowly to the window and peeked outside. A man stood near the old shed, half hidden behind the shadows. Her heart raced. Was it Brian? He never walked around the shed, and he would have called first. Before she could get a better look, the figure stepped back and disappeared behind the trees. Her hands shook as she backed away from the window. Just then, the phone rang loudly, so loud it almost felt aggressive. The caller ID flashed. Irene Dawson. Ruth picked up immediately. "Irene, something feels wrong. Grace sent a letter and—" "Ruth," Irene whispered urgently, as if someone was beside her. "Listen to me carefully. Grace was right. Lock your back door now, and if Brian shows up, don't let him in." Ruth froze. "What? Irene? That's my son. Why would you say that?" "I can't explain yet," Irene replied, voice trembling. "But Brian isn't telling you everything. Just trust me until I reach your place." Suddenly, loud knocking thundered from the front door. Ruth nearly dropped the phone. "Ruth, don't open it," Irene said sharply. "I'm begging you." The knocking grew faster, more urgent. Whoever was outside wasn't waiting patiently. Ruth approached the door quietly and looked through the peephole. Her blood ran cold. Brian, standing completely still, expression tight, eyes sharper than she had ever seen. He looked like Brian, but something felt different, heavier, controlled. "Mom," Brian said through the door, voice calm but too calm. "Open the door. We need to talk." Ruth stepped back. "Irene." "It's Brian, but something's wrong with him." Irene's breath hitched. "Do not open that door, Ruth. Not until you speak to Dr. Alan Brooks. He knows what Grace discovered." "What did Grace find?" Ruth whispered. "Ruth, call Dr. Brooks immediately. Tell him Brian came early. He'll explain." The line suddenly crackled with static. Ruth pressed the phone to her ear. "Irene? Hello? I can't hear you." The static grew louder, drowning Irene's voice. "Irene? What did you say? Irene?" And then, mid-sentence, the call cut off. The line went completely dead. Ruth Callahan stood frozen in her hallway, the silence after the dead call pressing on her chest like a weight she could not lift. Brian was still outside. She could hear his steady breathing through the thin wooden door. Too calm, too controlled. That wasn't her son's normal tone. Not the boy she had raised with trembling hands and soft encouragement. Her fingers shook as she stepped away from the door and walked toward the kitchen. She needed to think. Grace Lane's terrified letter, Irene Dawson's warnings, the shadowed figure behind the shed. They were pieces of a puzzle Ruth didn't yet understand, but she felt the picture was dangerous. She reached for her old landline phone, the only thing Brian couldn't hack or track, and dialed Dr. Alan Brooks. He had been Brian's mentor years ago, a man with a steady voice and sharp intuition. It rang twice before he picked up. "Ruth? Alan? You need to talk fast," she whispered. "Brian is at my door. Irene tried to warn me, but the line died." Dr. Brooks exhaled slowly, as though bracing himself. "Grace called me before she sent you that letter. She said she found something. Something Brian didn't want her to see." Ruth closed her eyes. "What did she find?" "I don't know yet, but she sounded convinced your life was in danger." The words hit her like cold wind. Ruth tightened her grip on the counter. Memories surfaced, the way Brian had been distant for months. Tara's sudden kindness turning into cold politeness. The financial documents Ruth once saw Brian lock away quickly when she walked in. At the time, she had brushed it off. She was a mother. She trusted him. But now everything felt like a lie she had willingly believed. Dr. Brooks continued, "Ruth, listen carefully. Don't confront Brian. Don't open the door. I'm driving to your house, but it'll take at least 20 minutes. You need to check the attic. Grace said she left something there for you." Ruth stiffened. "The attic? But she told me not to open it." "Grace was protecting you," he said. "But now you need what she hid." Ruth hung up, heart pounding. She glanced at the hallway. The attic door stood near the end. Old wood warped from years of neglect. She had avoided it after her husband died. Dust, silence, grief, all sealed in a narrow wooden frame. But now she felt something new there. Answers. She crept toward the door, every step sending echoes through the house. Brian's last knock still vibrated faintly in the walls. She tried not to think of him hearing her footsteps inside. The attic door groaned as she pushed it open. Cold air rushed down, carrying the old scent of forgotten memories. She climbed slowly, her hand trembling on the rail. Inside, faint morning light seeped through a small window. Boxes were stacked unevenly, untouched for years. Ruth scanned them until she saw something that didn't belong. A small sealed envelope taped beneath an old trunk. Her breath caught. The handwriting was unmistakable. Grace Lane. Ruth pulled the envelope free and sat on a dusty wooden stool. Her fingers shook as she opened it. Inside was a tiny flash drive and a note. "Ruth, if you're reading this, then Brian already made his move. Do not show this to him. Do not trust Tara, and do not stay in the house alone after tonight. The truth is worse than you think." Ruth's throat tightened. She felt the attic spinning around her footsteps echoed below. Slow, heavy. Someone was inside the house. Ruth held her breath. Brian was still outside. She had heard the door. This was someone else. She heard a soft whisper floating up the stairs. "Ruth, I know you're up there." The voice was female. "Tara." Ruth stood abruptly, the flash drive clutched tightly in her palm. Tara wasn't supposed to arrive until afternoon. Why was she here now? The footsteps came closer. Ruth backed away slowly, her heartbeat pounding inside her ears. Then Tara's voice sharpened, quiet but chilling. "You should have opened the door for Brian. Now we don't have time." Ruth felt terror climb up her spine. She turned to escape through the attic's side stairway, but froze. A small red blinking light was stuck to the wooden beam. A tracker. Someone had been monitoring the attic. She slowly realized the horrifying truth. The person she trusted most had been tracking her every move. Ruth didn't move. The red blinking light on the attic beam pulsed like a slow heartbeat, each flicker confirming her worst fear. Someone had been watching her long before she discovered the flash drive, and Tara's footsteps were getting closer. "Tara," Ruth called, steadying her voice. "Why are you here?" Tara paused at the top of the stairs. Her silhouette appeared in the narrow doorway, framed by dust and faint morning light. But her face, It wasn't the tight, polite smile she usually wore. It was colder, sharper. "I came to make sure you don't do something stupid," Tara said quietly. Ruth clutched the flash drive in her palm, hidden, but not safe. "Tara," Ruth whispered, "what are you talking about?" Tara took a step forward. "Brian didn't want to tell you yet. He thought you'd panic, but you were digging where you shouldn't. Grace should have stayed out of it." Grace. Ruth's breath tightened. "What did you do to her?" Tara's expression flickered, almost annoyed. "Grace threatened our family. She was going to expose Brian's financial situation, the debts, the fake accounts, the inheritance he moved without telling you. She thought she was protecting you." Ruth felt the floor sway. The room blurred. "Brian took my inheritance. Used," Tara corrected, folding her arms. "He used it. For us, for the house, for the business he said he had under control. Grace found the paperwork and tried to warn you." Ruth's chest burned. "And Irene?" "She knew too much," Tara said. "She started digging, just like you." Ruth felt something inside her shift. Fear melting into clarity, confusion hardening into anger. The blinking light, the sudden distance, Brian's refusal to let her move in. Everything snapped into place. "They were trying to isolate me," Ruth whispered. Tara's lips curled. "To protect you from the stress, that's all." It was a lie. Ruth could feel it in her bones. She stepped back, fingers closing around the flash drive. "So what now? You break into my house? Threaten me?" Tara sighed like a mother dealing with a stubborn child. "Ruth, we just need the drive. Once we control what's on it." A sound cut her off, a car door slamming, heavy, fast footsteps. Then Dr. Alan Brooks's voice thundered through the house. "Ruth, don't go near her." Tara's face drained of color. "You called him." Ruth didn't answer. Dr. Brooks rushed into the attic doorway, breathless but fierce, positioning himself between Ruth and Tara. "Tara," he said sharply, "step back, right now." Tara didn't move. Dr. Brooks lowered his voice. "Irene called me last night. She told me everything, the accounts, the life insurance policy Brian renewed without Ruth's signature, the forged documents. This is bigger than you think." Ruth felt her knees weaken. Life insurance, renewed without her signature. What were they planning? Tara's mask slipped completely. "Alan, stay out of this. Brian and I are trying to fix things before they get worse." "They already got worse," Dr. Brooks said. "Grace didn't die in an accident, did she?" Ruth gasped. Tara froze. That was her answer. Ruth felt the attic contract around her. The truth pressing in from all sides. Grace had been right. Irene had been right. The phone call dying mid-sentence wasn't a coincidence. Tara swallowed hard. "You don't understand. Grace was going to destroy our family." "She was trying to save Ruth's life," Dr. Brooks shot back. Outside, another car pulled up. Fast tires grinding. "Brian," his voice boomed inside the house. "Mom, Tara, where are you?" Tara panicked. "Give me the drive, Ruth. Now." Ruth stepped behind Dr. Brooks, every ounce of fear replaced with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. "No." Tara moved forward, but stopped when something slipped from Ruth's other hand. The letter. Grace's handwriting, visible through the thin fold. Tara's eyes widened. "Don't open that." Ruth opened it. Inside was one sentence, written in shaky ink. "If anything happens to me, the person responsible is someone you once trusted completely." Another line was beneath it, faded, almost rubbed out, but still legible enough to read the final words. "His name is..." Just as Ruth leaned closer to see the name, Brian's footsteps thundered up the stairs toward the attic, fast and furious. She looked down at the letter. The name was unmistakably familiar. Brian's footsteps thundered up the attic stairs like a warning drum. Ruth folded Grace's letter tightly in her palm. The name burned into her mind. Her heart pounded, every beat syncing with the approaching sound of her son. The boy she raised, the man she believed she knew. "Mom?" Brian's voice cracked through the dust-filled air. "Mom, step away from her." Tara spun toward the stairway. "Brian, she has the drive and Grace's letter." The fear in Tara's tone wasn't fear of Ruth. It was fear of exposure. Dr. Brooks angled himself protectively in front of Ruth. She steadied herself on his shoulder, breath shaky, but resolve firming like steel cooling in water. Brian appeared in the doorway, sweat on his forehead, eyes darting between Tara and Ruth, like trying to judge which fire to put out first. He wasn't furious. He looked terrified. "Mom," Brian said softly, "give me the drive, please. You don't know what you found." Ruth straightened. "I know more than you think." Brian winced, as if her calm voice hurt him more than yelling ever could. "I was going to explain everything Grace misunderstood. Irene got confused. This wasn't supposed to involve you." Tara's jaw tightened. "Brian, stop talking." "No," Ruth said. "Let him speak." Brian swallowed, eyes glistening with something between guilt and fear. "Mom, I just needed time. The loans were coming due fast. The investors pulled out. Tara was scared. We made some choices, wrong choices, but only to protect you." Ruth felt a strange mix of heartbreak and clarity, each word slicing but also revealing. "Protect me?" she repeated quietly. "By taking my inheritance? By forging my signature on policies I never approved? By watching me through a camera in my own home?" Brian flinched. Tara closed her eyes. Dr. Brooks spoke firmly. "Brian, this is beyond debt. Grace didn't die because of panic. Something happened that night." Tara looked away. Brian's silence confirmed more than words ever could. Ruth took one step closer to her son. She could smell the cologne she bought him years ago for Christmas. She remembered him at 6 years old, running to her with skinned knees at 16, sobbing over his stolen bike. At 23, telling her he'd met the woman he loved. She had loved him through every version of himself, but now she had to love herself too. "I read Grace's letter," Ruth said. "I know who she named." Brian closed his eyes. "Mom, please." Ruth's voice softened, trembling but unwavering. "Tell me the truth, Brian, before I read it out loud." For a moment, he looked like he might. Then Tara stepped forward. "Ruth, you don't want to do this. None of us walk away clean if you expose everything." Ruth looked at her, calm, steady, almost eerily composed. "Tara, I already know." Silence spread through the attic like a storm cloud ready to burst. Brian's breathing grew rapid. "Mom, please, don't say it." But Ruth didn't need to, because footsteps echoed from below, firm, confident, not Brian's, not Tara's. A voice called from the bottom of the stairs. "Ruth, it's Irene. I think it's time they hear the whole story." Tara's face went pale. Brian stumbled back a step. Irene Dawson emerged slowly into the attic, her presence as sharp and controlled as ever. She carried a folder in her hands, not shaking, not nervous, certain. "Irene?" Ruth whispered. "Grace said you might know." "I know everything," Irene said, "and I have proof." Brian lunged forward. "No." Dr. Brooks blocked him instantly. "Don't." Irene opened the folder. Inside were copies, bank transfers, emails between Tara and a lawyer, a second life insurance policy, and a hospital report about Grace's final day. Ruth felt the air thicken. Irene met Ruth's eyes. Grace left this with me the night before she died. She said if anything happened to her, it wouldn't be an accident. Brian's voice cracked. I didn't. Mom, I swear I didn't touch her. I didn't hurt Grace. Tara looked at him sharply. Brian, stop talking. Irene lifted a single page. This email. Tara, it's from you. Scheduling a meeting with Grace at the lake house. 30 minutes before the so-called accident. Tara froze. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Ruth suddenly felt the world tilt. The truth, long hidden behind lies, finally surfaced. A knot formed in her stomach, equal parts devastation and relief. Brian whispered, Tara, you told me she never showed up. Tara finally spoke, voice thin and cracking. I didn't mean for anything to happen. Ruth stared at Tara, then at her son, who looked like a man watching his entire life collapse under its own weight. She took a breath, deep and steady. Brian, Tara, we're going downstairs, all of us, and I'm going to decide your future very carefully. She walked past them, pushing the attic door open. The hallway stretched before her like a long, uncertain path. But she was no longer afraid to walk it. She took the first step down the stairs, and just as the doors slammed shut behind her, she knew the outcome rested entirely on her next move. The morning after everything unraveled, Ruth Callahan stood by her kitchen window, watching sunlight slip quietly across the tiled floor. It felt different now, cleaner somehow, warmer, as if the house itself had finally exhaled after years of holding its breath. She placed a fresh vase of lilies on the table, Grace's favorite. Irene had brought them earlier, along with a soft hug and the whispered words, "You did the right thing." Ruth wasn't entirely sure yet, but she felt lighter holding the stems, arranging each flower until they faced the light. For the first time in months, Ruth opened all the windows. A gentle breeze drifted in, carrying hints of morning dew and distant bakery bread. It filled every room, chasing out the shadows Tara and Brian had left behind. When she sat down at the table, she found herself instinctively setting 2 cups, one for her, one for someone else, someone who wasn't coming. She paused. A long pause, a real one. Old habits, she whispered with a small bittersweet smile, moving the extra cup away. Sometimes the heart takes longer to catch up. Later that day, she met Dr. Alan Brooks on the porch. He leaned on the railing, hands folded thoughtfully. "How are you? Really?" he asked gently. Ruth exhaled, tired, relieved, sad, grateful all at once. "That's healing," he said. "That's what it looks like." Ruth nodded. She thought of Brian, arrested but cooperating, heartbroken by the truth he'd ignored for too long. She thought of Tara, now facing charges for fraud, coercion, and the events of that night with Grace. Ruth felt no triumph in their downfall, just necessity, justice, and a quiet ache she knew would take time to soften. "I keep thinking of Grace," Ruth whispered, "how she trusted me with the truth, how she didn't let fear win." Dr. Brooks smiled. "You honored her. It mattered. More than she could say." By evening, Ruth took a slow walk around her garden. The roses Grace had pruned last summer were blooming again, soft pink petals unfolding like small forgivenesses. Ruth touched one gently, and for a moment she felt her friend beside her, not in sadness, in strength. At sunset, Irene joined her on the back porch. They sat together without speaking for a long time. 2 older women whose lives had been shaken and reshaped by truth. The quiet between them wasn't empty. It was comforting. Shared. "I'm proud of you," Irene finally said. Ruth's eyes warmed. I'm learning to be proud of me too. When Irene left, the sky had turned deep gold, fading to violet. Ruth stayed outside a while longer, closing her eyes and letting the breeze brush her cheeks. Not a goodbye. A beginning. Later that night, she wrote a letter, the last one she owed Grace. I carried your secret. Now the world carries the truth. Your name is safe. Your voice is heard. Your story ends with justice, not silence. Rest easy, my friend. Ruth. She placed it under the vase of lilies. As she turned off the lights and headed to her bedroom, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Real peace. The kind that stays. Before closing her eyes, she whispered to the quiet room, "Today, I chose myself." It wasn't revenge. It wasn't a victory. It was freedom. And with that final thought, she drifted into the first calm sleep she'd had in years. What would you have done in Ruth's place? Tell me your thoughts below. I read every single one. If this story touched your heart, like, subscribe, and stay with me for more emotional journeys. See you in the next chapter of Life and Mystery.